Hello everyone, welcome to lecture 5 in which we're going to talk about form processing using PHP on the server side. Okay, so we know that everything nowadays revolves around data, and all these pages in Google or any website nowadays are generated dynamically. And the data is basically is something that comes either from the database or from other sources, and they are actually generated into some HTML in a user-friendly and readable way, right? But other than just reading the data from the web browsers, we also submit the data to the server, right? So web documents could be also used for collecting the user input, right? And in this particular lecture, we'll talk about how we can go and write a web document, web page, which can collect the data, right? So basically, there are two different ways that can be used to collect the data from the browser. And we're going to discuss about these two different ways. There's a third way as well. The third way will be discussed later. So the first way of passing the data to the server from the browser is using the query string. So what is a query string? So if you look into a URL, right? So what is a URL? URL contains the location of the resource on a remote server, right? So we already, dissected the URL into pieces. We said that, okay, this is the protocol, this is the domain, and this is the path, and then it also contains the location of the resource that we are about to access, right? But after that, we can also include some additional information that we would like to we'd like the server to get, and then use that information, some data, right? In order to pass some parameterized data, we have to put this question mark and then write the data that we would like to pass to the server in this particular format. For example, I'd like to pass information like username or some SID, to the server. I can go and write it like this. I can go and write, for example, into the address bar, the username, and then it's equal to some value, and then the ampersand, and then another parameter, and so forth. So you can see that this is a kind of a parameterized the data that contains like keys and values. So key and value is delimited by this equality sign, and the key value pairs are delimited by this ampersand sign. So this entire string is in fact called as the query string, and it is usually kind of part our URL, something that we usually write down on the address bar of the browser, right? So this information can be accessed and processed by the web server, by the script that we will be writing, will be executing on the web server. Right? And we're going to learn how we can go and read this information from the web server too, right? The other way of passing data to the server is using some graphical components like forms, right? So the form contains certain controls, like input controls for different types of data. For example, we'd like to get some string, and it's just a single line string. This could be if you'd like to collect the username or maybe password or anything, you can go and use a text box, and text box contains a very short string. And the user can type in the information into this text box. But what if your input is multi-line text? Now, in this case, you're going to use a different control. This is called a text area. In this text area, you can write multi-line text. Okay, so this could kind of represent some commands or anything like a description. Okay, that the user can go and enter. Other than that, you can go and use other controls. There are many different controls other than available in modern browsers nowadays. For example, if you would like to collect the user the value from a listed input, okay. So the radio button can be used for that particular purpose, right? So we have a list of values from which we can choose, and we can only choose only one option out of many, right? What if we can choose multiple options out of many? In this case, we're going to use checkboxes. And there could be many other input controls, like, for example, the date or email or password, or just a given range or some numeric value, right? So all of these kind of controls are given, and then we can go use all these controls, okay, while building our forms. Other than just user input controls, we can also receive the user actions, okay? So we can go and use the buttons to represent certain user actions, right? For example, there are some pre-programmed buttons in the browser, for example, submit or reset, to represent certain actions that are useful. For example, the submit button, what it will do, it will collect the data from the form, okay, and puts it into some kind of encoded text form, right, and sends it to the server. And in the server, we have some server-side script like PHP script, which can read these values and then do something with these values, and maybe just use them to generate a new HTML page. The reset button, on the other hand, can be used to clean up to clear all the form, or just set it back to its default values, right? So we're going to learn how we can go and use these buttons and these controls to create simple forms. Okay, so let's go and start creating a simple form. And then this form, we're going to see how we can go and create, and in HTML, how we're going to go and create simple form, which, allows us to search something from Google, right? So let's go and do that. So for that, I will go and start my PHP storm. Okay, so a new project, and you already know that we already set up our PHP storm environment for working with PHP. So there shouldn't be any problem with that. So let me go and create a project. I called it like lecture 5a, but you can go and call it the way you like. So I go and press create button. So it goes and creates a new project. And this project, I go and create a simple index.html file. Sorry, index.php file. So I'm going to create index.php file. And let me go and create a simple document. We're going to call it forms, right? And my first form will be, okay, as the form that I will use for searching things from Google. So for creating forms, I have to go and use the form tag, okay, and the form tag contains a compulsory attribute that I need to set up, right? So the first attribute is called action, and it contains a URL of the of some script which is responsible for processing the data that this particular form collects. Okay, so it collects the data from the user, and then it needs to have some place to send this data back, right? So I can go and write down here, for example, I can go and write down here google.com search, right? So this is the place where I would like to send the data that I'm going to collect from the user. Let me go and say search criteria here, right? And then I'll go and say input t. So it goes and creates a new control, input control, a text control for the search criteria. So the name attribute of this control is the name of the parameter. So I'm saying, okay, this is the parameter name, and it's called Q. And Google knows how to represent what to do with this particular parameter. I'm kind of saying, okay, I got a parameter named Q, and whichever input the user enters into this text box will be the value of that particular parameter. And the next control is the submit control. And the submit control is just a button. The caption of this button is, let's go and call it search. Okay, in this case, the value represents the caption of the button, and the type of this is called submit. So submit, what it will do is it take the user input that is entered into this particular control and then sends it to this URL, right? Let me go and run this particular page. So in order to run it, I have to go and create a run configuration. So I go and click Add Configuration here, open the templates, select the built-in web server here, and then I'll go and create configuration, and now just give a name to this configuration. So I'll say localhost, and then press Apply, and then press OK. And now I have a run configuration. Now I can go and press Run here, and I can see that it actually started a built-in web server at the port number 80 in my local host. So now I can go and write localhost, right? And because the file name that I'd like to execute is called index.php, I can simply go and press enter, and simply loads that index.php file, because its name is called index. But if your file name is different, let's say about or anything else, then you have to write the full path. Let me go and give some caption to this particular form. I'm going to use H2 here, Google search, right? So this way I know what sort of form it is. I can actually include this H2 inside the form too. Why not? Okay, one more thing I forgot to mention. Note that all your input controls, the ones that you would like to associate with this form, must be inside that form, right? So this text control is associated with this form. This button is associated with this form. So I have to go and write them within this particular form control. That's how browser knows. Like whenever you go and click submit, okay, it knows which form it has to, okay, which form this particular button belongs, and okay, which data it has to collect, and then where it has to send that data. It knows all about that because this particular input, okay, submit type is inside this form, right? If it's outside it, then the browser doesn't know to which form this particular button belongs and what it needs to do and so forth. Or if you go and place this particular control outside the form, then okay, and when you go and press submit, it doesn't know that it has to go and collect the value from this particular input control, right? So in order to make sure that everything works, make sure that it is contained inside this form tag, right? So that is the important thing. Let me go and refresh that. So you got the Google search here. I can go and write like this too, and it will work anyway, right? So if your file name is different, then just go and write the file name here, and we'll kind of load and execute the file in the right way. So just to make sure that I would like to see what sort of requests are going and coming, okay, I can go and turn on my network tab and then my developer environment on the browser. Okay, so let me go and type in here PHP documentation, for example, right? So I can go and do something like that, and now press search. So now as soon as I go and press search, I'm going to see the Google's page, and this Google's page contains the search results for this particular search criteria. Yeah? So, okay, good. So what the Google is doing in here, right? And then to pay attention to my, okay, URL that is, okay, sent to the Google, right? So something is happening here. Okay, first of all, I can see that in my URL, I got a query string. This query string contains a parameterized information. Q is the key of name of the parameter, and this is the value of the parameter, right? It contains something like a little bit of modified text. So this plus sign is, okay, something that represents space on my query string. Okay, my query string is not written down literally. It is URL encoded, and URL encoding means just escaping certain characters that could kind of affect the way how I encode my parameters, right? So, but that's not a problem. Google can go and read it correctly, so it's not using this plus. It can go and decode it back to the right string that I actually entered into my text box, and it can actually understand this Q. It can read it, and then because it can read it, it can go and place it into this text box. And not only just place this value into the text box, but it can also generate corresponding research results here. I can see all these research results, right? I can go and look into the actual actual request, right? That's actually happened. So let me go and look here. It's a redirection happening, some sort of redirection, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is I can see, okay, I can see what sort of request is being generated by the browser. So this is just a simple GET request to this particular path, okay, and I can go and see the parsed query string parameters. Now it contains a single parameter called Q, and this is the value of it. I can see how it is actually encoded too. So I can see the URL encoded version of, or URL decoded version of this this particular value, right? So that is how I can go and create a simple form, right? Okay, so let's continue. So I can go and create other controls as well. For example, I can go and create, other than the text box, simple text box, I can go and create a password control. Password control is similar to text box control, but the value that is typed into the password is not visible to the user. But okay, the value will be sent the same way as as it works for the text box. So let me go and create a separate form, and in this case I'm going to create a different form. Let me go and put some horizontal rule here, and then go and create another form. So in this case, instead of sending the data to Google, I will go and send the data to http://bin.org get, right? So I'm going to send the data to that particular place. And this is going to go and give you back, okay, in JSON format, the data that you actually, the server received, right? So, okay, so I'd like to go and create a form with a definition list, and I'd like to go and say dt and plus dd. So here, let me go and say first name, right, and I can go and write, or let me go to a username, not first name, username, and I can go and say input text, and the name is going to be username. I can go and set other parameters like max length, and I can say 10. So it means that it cannot contain an input greater than 10 characters. Okay, so this is the maximum size. I can say disabled, meaning that user cannot input anything into this particular field, or I can say read only. In this case, user can only see it. I mean, disabled is, it will be a little bit blurred, okay, grayed, and the user cannot interact with that particular element. I mean, it cannot even focus it, okay. The read only, on the other hand, allows the user to focus the element, but it cannot change, user cannot change the value here, right? So these are just additional, okay, parameters that I can use to control different properties of this particular control. So for example, I can go and use another one called password. So let me go and write password here, and let's say password control. And let's say dd again, and in the dd part, I'd like to put a submit button. Let's call it submit, right? So I can go back to my browser. So yeah, let's just make it slightly smaller. So okay, this is my form. Let's just give a caption to this form with h2. Okay, my form or something like that. And I can go and I can go and do that. Okay, I can make a little bit of a styling here. Okay, I would like to have my labels, okay, side by side with the control. So okay, let me go and do that here. So I can go and put some style here, and then I can select the DTs. Okay, by the way, DTs and DDs are all block elements, right? So because they are block elements, they're occupying the entire line, and they're just following. This is just let me go and inspect that. This is just a margin, right? So this DD has a margin, DT doesn't have a margin, DD has the margin. I can get rid of that margin as well. So let me go and do that, right? So I can go and select DT. So I'm writing the CSS, the entire CSS, embed it into the HTML, but obviously you have to go and put it into some different file just to make it visible. Okay, so how can I go and make them side by side? Okay, first of all, I need to select DT and make it float. So float left, right? So, and I can go and select DT and DD, and I can say padding, padding 0, right? Or I can give a little bit of a width to my, yeah, I can make padding left 0, because that is the one. And I can go and give a little bit of a width to my DT, and a little bit of a padding bottom. I think 10 pixels will be enough. So if I do so, and if I go and refresh my page, that would look like a form, right? So it has a caption, it has a form, and it has this button, right? So I can go and write down something. As you can see, I cannot enter more than 10 characters. So let me go and type in something in the password. I can go and also, okay, I can go and also type in something as well. Again, this is it has the minimum, maximum, okay, length as well. So now I can go and press submit. And now if I press submit, what I will see, I'll see that, by the way, yeah, I made something wrong here. Yeah, by the way, I just need to change it to something else. And let's go and get rid of this max length for the password. And I can refresh it back. Okay, so I can go and say something like that, press submit. And I don't want to save it on my browser, but that's not a problem. I can see these both parameters were successfully received by http bin.org, and I can see them being passed on my, again, URL as a query string, because I'm using an http get to pass that information. I can also check that it's actually sending an http get. Okay, this is the request method and so forth, right? That's what I'm using to send. Okay, now I can go and change it. Okay, I don't want the browser to go and send the data in, okay, in get on the URL. The reason why is, first of all the data is in fact given to the user. User can go and interact with that. Okay, some of that could be like hidden or could be a little bit, okay, technical, so you don't want to show everything to the user. And the most important thing why I don't want to use the URL, okay, as my main kind of place for sending the data, is that its limitation. The URL has a maximum size, right? It has its maximum length is 1024 characters long. I cannot send anything greater than that, right? So, but obviously I can go and send more data, okay, on to a web server. So in this case, I cannot use URL, right? I would like to use something else, and you guys know what I can use for that. I can go and use HTTP post method, and in order to do this, I just need to set my form method to post. In this case, my form will collect the user data, right? Now, instead of putting it into my query string, it puts it into the request body of my HTTP request. Right, my request body section is infinitely big. I can go and put as much information as I can into that particular place, right? So now, yeah, by the way, I have to go and change the endpoint, because http bin.org get will only accept HTTP get methods. It won't accept post methods. If I go and change it to post, that will be fine. I can go and do that now, and let me go back into my form. Let me go and refresh my form, and I just type in something like that, and then press submit. Now I can see that my data is received in a different form. It's received in a form-like form, but it was able to receive it. I can see the data that I filled into the form, and I press submit. This remote server, okay, could parse this information and then display it to me in this way. I can go and look into the request itself, right? So I can go and check that. Yeah, now it is a post. Now it's using an HTTP post request, and look into the cargo, okay? It's using, again, the same URL encoded data, but it was basically in my URL bar, in my address bar. Now everything moved to the HTTP request body. Again, in the same way, right? In a URL encoded way, with equal sign and with this ampersand everything, is basically placed into the HTTP request request body, right? And it's also using HTTP post. So that's just the default behavior of the form submit for the browser if you go and change the request method to post. You can also change it to put or anything else, any valid HTTP request method, okay, and the form will go and collect the information and then pass it on, okay, inside the HTTP request body, right? So we can go and generate, okay, we can go and collect different other types of information from the user. For example, I can go and get again some string, but in a multi-line form too. So let me go and do that as well. I can go and get that. So I can go and say comment, or let's say biography, I don't know. And then I can say, instead of using an input control, I can go and say text area, and I can say, I don't need the ID here. I can leave the columns and rows. Okay, column is the number of characters, okay, this particular text area can fit horizontally, and this rows is number of lines of text this text area can fit. I mean, of course, you can go and write like more than 10 lines of text, and in this case, it will show you a scroll bar, but in this case, no problem. So I can say biography, something like that. It's multi-line text. And let me go back again, refresh that entire thing. I got a biography here. I can go and write something like that again and press submit. And I can see all that information is being passed to that HTTP bin. I think I can close it for a moment. I don't need it anymore. I can see that all the information is being received by the server. All of that information is passed as a parameterized URL encoded information. Right, so what else I can go and do here? Yeah, I can go and use checkboxes and radio buttons and let me labels. Let me go and use those things too. For example, I am going to say, let's go and start with the radio button. So my birth town, right? And I can say, I can go and say what the input R, how many input R's I want. I would like to have maybe 3. So yeah, so I can go and place, yeah, let me go and get rid of these IDs here. So I can go and say parameter birth town, right? So, and I just give the name of the parameter birth town, and I can go and say the value. Value is, let's say, Tashkent. You know what? I don't really like to write everything here like this. Okay, Tashkent. And maybe Samarkand. Samarkand. I can just go and write Samarkand here. And I can go and write Bukhara. Right, and just Bukhara, and that's it. Yeah, you can go and put a lot of different things. The most important thing is that you name these 3 controls the same way, because this is how you're going to group these radio buttons. So you remember, like any radio buttons, they should be grouped by something. You just make their names exactly the same, and this is how, and these are the values that will be assigned to that. So let's go and see how how this radio button will map these values. Okay, so I can go and select the Tashkent, and I can press submit. And if I go and press submit, I can see that the birth town is now equal to Tashkent, right? So now this is how the value is received by the server, and it's now being shown like this. You see, there is a parameter named birth town, and the value that I chose will be, okay, sent to the server. If I go and select Samarkand, it will go and show Samarkand, right? Because I selected this one. Well, what if I want to select something by default? For example, I would like to select, okay, Tashkent by default. In this case, I have to go and write checked, right? It doesn't matter. I can go and write like this. I can go and write anything here. Just the mere existence of this particular parameter will make this particular option as selected. You can see it's selected now. Okay, so I can go and send, and this is just a default option, let's say, right? Okay, what about the checkboxes, right? How can I go and make checkboxes? So let's say favorite foods, right? And I can go and say DD, and inside I can go and write input C. We'll make a checkbox, and then I can go and write, okay, pilaf. Here I say pilaf, right? And kebab, or yeah, I think I have to use it a different way here, and I'm going to show a different example with the checkbox again. So in this case, I can go and write favorite food, and I have to pass, okay, because checkboxes allow you to select multiple items from an available list, and the value that you'll be using here will be an array. So you have to name the array, okay, the parameter which contains an array. This contains a value, this contains a single value, but this particular parameter contains an array. So in this case, you have to go and use this, okay, square brackets to indicate that this particular value will contain an array. So in this case, I'm going to say value now, and I say pilaf, right, and then I go and place it here, and then say kebab, right? So you can say kebab here. I can go and say what else? Which foods you like? Hamburger, right? Do you like hamburger? So maybe someone likes hamburgers, right? So I have this checkboxes. Again, they are grouped with the same name. They have different values, and I have these just small captions that indicate which value I'm selecting. Okay, some sort of a label. I can select multiple as well. I can press submit, and now you can see that, okay, this particular parameter, it's an array parameter. It contains, instead of a single value, it contains multiple values, pilaf and kebab, the ones that are selected by the user, right? Again, if I want to make any of these options to be selected by default, I just need to go and add checked attribute into my HTML. And if I refresh my page, I can see that this one is selected by default. I can go and select hamburger, press submit, and I can see pilaf and hamburger is selected, and it's been received by the user. Oh, you know what? I just want to show you how this thing is, how the array is encoded, okay, using a URL encoding. So let me go to the network, and it's empty right now. Let me go and press submit. And I can go and take a look into the post, and I want to see, okay, the view source. And this is what is being sent in the HTTP request body. Look, okay, the biography is set to whichever text I entered. Okay, birth town is set to the value, but now, okay, favorite food, the square brackets are encoded, URL encoded with the hexadecimal representation of the ASCII, okay, with this percentage sign, meaning that, okay, you're writing some ASCII code. And it's equal to pilaf, and look, and the same variable is repeating, same parameter is repeating, but with a different value. So I got repeating parameters, right? So if you look into this, if you look at the parsed version of it, I have two parameters repeating with multiple different values. So if I go and pass multiple values like this, okay, with the same parameter name, then the PHP interpreter back in the server will be able to recognize it as an array. And then, okay, it will go and create an array for that particular parameter, and then set the values, like multiple values, to this parameter. So if I just simply repeat the same parameter in my URL, in my parameterized, okay, parameterized URL encoded data, right? So in this case, it will go and recognize the array and then use it as an array. Something that you kind of bear in mind if you want, right? So, okay, we're done with the checkbox, right? There are many different controls as well. For example, the date. So I can go and write birth date. Oh, yeah. Oh, forgot one more thing. So, of using a checkbox. So let me go and write gender, or say is male. I wouldn't say gender because you might, some like females could get offended with that. So I would rather call it is male. It's a Boolean value, right? If I go and say gender and set it as a Boolean value, and if true means a male and false means a female, obviously that would be very, very insulting. So I rather go and say is male, something like that, right? So in this case, yeah, if it's true, it's a male. If it's not true, then it is obviously female, right? Or, yeah, I mean, some people think it's a spectrum, but I'm kind of a conventional guy, so I think it's a binary. So anyway, so is male, right? So I can go and write a name of the parameter. I can say is male. And in this case, I don't even need a value, right? So now how this particular parameter will be passed to the server. It doesn't have a value, and it just has some particular name. Okay, I just want to know how browser will interpret this checkbox. Okay, which doesn't have a value in this case, right? It will be interpreted and as a binary checkbox. Okay, it could be on or off. So let's go and check that. So I refresh my page. So I got an Ismail here, right? So I can go and let's say select this and then press submit. Now I can see that Ismail option is set to a value called on. So it means that, okay, the user actually selected that particular value. I mean, checked that value. That's why it has a value called on, okay? And your intuition could be saying, okay, maybe if I don't check that, the value will be off, right? No, it won't be like that. Okay, let me go and try to submit the form again. And if I go and press submit, oh, I don't see this Ismail parameter at all. Okay, so this is just something weird that browser is doing. If the checkbox is not selected, then it's not even including this thing into the list of parameters that are being passed. Let me show you that in the actual HTTP request that is being sent here. Look into this one. It's not selected, right? Let me go and select that first. I'm going to check into this one, and if I go and look into the view, okay, the actual data that is being sent to the server, I can see that this parameter is actually sent, right? This Ismail is equal to on. That's fine, right? But if I go and let me clean it up. If I go and unselect it and then press submit, I can select this post again, and I can see what is being sent. But now I don't see Ismail being sent to the server. So server, okay, doesn't know that this particular parameter even exists, right? So even if you want to know if this particular parameter is set or not set, you can just simply use isSet method in PHP and then figure out if this particular value is if true or false, right? That's how, I mean, the HTTP, okay, will encode this particular parameter. It doesn't even include, okay, a binary checkbox if it's not selected into your response. Okay, it's something that you need to remember. Don't look for Ismail, okay, option somewhere else. I mean, we will talk about the PHP, okay, and server-side scripting. And obviously, the PHP script will also not receive, okay, this value because the browser is not sending it. Okay, the browser is not sending this information to the server. So you have to conclude yourself that this particular checkbox is not selected, right? So something you need to know about the browser, okay, and the checkbox, right? Okay, so there are many other things like options, right? So again, because we have the way to offer the user multiple options and then make the user to choose either one option or multiple options. Okay, in some cases we might have, let's say, 100 options, right? And obviously, creating 100 radio buttons or 100 checkboxes will be really, really confusing. It will take a lot of space, and the user won't be able to, okay, kind of find the necessary item that he's looking for, right? So in this case, we can go and use a different control. We can go and use lists and combo boxes, okay? So let me go and create a different control, input control. And this is going to be a combo box, right? So combo box, let me go and say country of birth, right? And instead of these checkboxes, I can go and use a different control called select. And this select has country of birth. This is a parameter name. And this select control contains other child controls called options. Let me go and create 5 for now. So I can go and write Uzbekistan, I don't know, Kazakhstan, and maybe Russia, and Kyrgyzstan, and let's say Tajikistan. And we also have, let's not, okay, Turkmenistan. I don't know, just for, yeah, for completeness of this scene. Okay, so we got Russia here and then everything. So I can go and use just country codes to represent each country, right? So I think it's TG, right? And TK, I guess, and it's RU, right? So these are just country codes that represent the country. Okay, so now this is just a Dropbox, and the user can select the multiple values from that, and then let's see how these values will be converted into an URL encoded string. So I can select Uzbekistan here, and then I can press submit, and now, yeah, it's just a simple, okay, key value pair, and then it's Uz, okay, country of birth, Uz. And it's going and receiving it successfully, as we can see here. It's just a simple, okay, value map, like the same way as the radio button does. Okay, what about okay, multiple values? What if I want to select multiple values? Let me go and say countries visited. Okay, so I can go and rename the parameter, say country visited. And now I would like to or say that the user can go and select multiple values. I can set the size to 3, and doesn't matter what you set to the multiple, or you can just leave it like this. Now it will allow the user to select multiple values from this given list and then send them as in the form of an array. Remember, oh, by the way, I have to go and put this square brackets to indicate that this particular parameter is an array parameter, not key value pair, right? Size means, okay, how many options to show at once. Everything else will be kind of scrollable, right? So let me go and do that. So I can go and scroll. I can see 3 values here. Let's say I've been in Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and in Russia, right? So I can select multiple values and go and press submit. Now I can see, okay, so these are the countries visited. Now it's an array because, I mean, I indicated it like an array, right? So again, it's passed like like a checkbox, right? So in the checkbox, you remember it was an array. By the way, if you just select one single item, then it won't be an array, right? That's again some weirdness of the browser, right? So you can see if I go and select just an Uzbekistan here, just an Uzbekistan, press submit. And come on, right? Why it's not an array, right? That is just, again, some weirdness that is encoded into this browser. Okay, I know this is a multiple value selecting parameter. I can select multiple elements, right? But what if I select one single element? It just maps it to a single value. If I select two, it maps it to an array, right? And if it doesn't select anything, right? If it doesn't select anything, by the way, let me go and refresh that. If I'm not selecting anything, right? In this case, yeah, countries visited is not even passed as an option, right? So it's not even passed. I mean, I haven't selected anything, okay, and it's not even passing anything to the server. Okay, that's just how it works, right? So that's something you need to understand. Same as the checkbox. If you don't select anything from that list or from the radio button, then obviously that parameter is not passed at all to the server. If you select just a single value, then it is mapped as a single value. And if it's like just multiple values, then it will be like an array, right? So you need to go and like just understand how these things are sent to the server, because you them the way you like. Okay, there is another one called a label. A label is used to provide a label here, but here we're basically using DTDD, but sometimes you can find other ways of writing form value pairs. For example, I can go and use something like that. For example, instead of using a DL, I can use field set. And inside a field set, I can give the name of the field set using a legend. For example, let me just put it above everything because it's kind of, let's say, more important. So, okay, full name. And I can say and inside this field set I can say form group. Again, some class, doesn't matter what you name it, and I can say label, and I have to give the name of the control for which this label is for. So let's say first name, and the label is first name, and I can say input t first name. And I have to go and write the ID as well, because why? Because I'm using, okay, ID is for identifying elements locally, right? So if I want to reference this control somewhere inside some other places, like in my HTML or somewhere maybe in JavaScript, we'll talk about that as well, or in CSS, right? So I want to reference these controls either using CSS or even inside this HTML or even in JavaScript something. I have to set the ID of that control. So that's that, because I'm using first name, okay, I have to go and set this ID. This is the ID of that control. This name here is not the ID, right? This name is used by the form to identify the parameter that particular input value actually represents, right? This name is the parameter name. The ID is the ID of that control that I can use to select it in different ways. So I can go and write like this, and I can use the label like this. In fact, I can go and write last name, and here I can have last name as well. Let's go and write last name here. Okay, yeah, everything is correct. I have last name, and I can go right here. Okay, cool. So I got full name, I got a field set. This is something that can group elements. I got a first name and last name, right? You can see this label is sitting next to the control, and it kind of helps you to specify the caption for that control, right? So I can press submit now, and I can see the first name and last name are received and processed by the server, right? So that's cool. So what else? Okay, buttons. We already have a submit button here, wherever it is. I can go and create another button called reset. Oops. Right, and I can call it reset or clear. And what it will do, it will just clear all the values that are written here. So I can refresh that, and if I fill in something, let's say I'm selecting Samarkand, I select Hamburg, I select this, and if I press reset, everything will be set back to the default, to whichever values that I used to in order to, while rendering this particular page, right? Okay, so we talked about field set. Yeah, we can also style controls, and when we are styling it, then we should be able to select these elements. Note that all of these controls like submit button, reset, and this checkbox, radio, they all are sharing the same tag name. Their types are different, right? How can I select only text boxes, not radio buttons or anything? So in this case, I should be able to select these tags by their attributes, not by their tag name, not by their class or by the ID, okay? I should be able to select them by the attribute. So how can I go and use attribute selection? So in this case, I have to open square bracket, and then here I have to write type equals to text, right? This will go and select all these like text boxes, for me, and it can go and style them, right? So what I can do here, I can go and change the font weight, for example, to bold. I can go and say color. Let me go and say green. I can go and say border. Border. I can say background color. Say gray. And border radius, let's go and say 15 pixels, right? So it makes it slightly bended. I don't want the border itself, right? Something like that, right? So let me go and check this out. So what I have here, so if I go and do this, okay, so maybe I just make it light red or light gray. Let's go and put light gray. So I can go and use something like that, right? This kind of will be, I can go and put some padding as well to make it look a bit bigger. 10 pixels, isn't it too big? What do you think? Okay, it's too big. Yeah, let me put 5 pixels. 5 pixels, right? And let me make the form group margin bottom 10 pixels. In this case, I can go and use the margin as well. Okay, so let me go and try this out. Yeah, it's kind of manageable to me, right? So I can go and write something like that, right? I can go and style it the way I want. Again, if you don't want this border when you select it, then you have to go and use a pseudo class, let's say focus or something, and then take away the border from that as well. Let's go and try that out. I'm not sure it will work, but again, you can find that there's a pseudo class called focus, and I can say border none. And let's go and try this out. Okay, so again, it didn't work. Maybe I just need to go and look into something else. All right, so this black border line, I don't know. It's something that comes with Chrome nowadays. So there should be some way you can get rid of this black border when you select it, but most of the time you can just select, you can go and style your input control or buttons or everything the way you like, okay? The way you like. Okay, I don't really like that background color. Let's just leave it as it is, because I see this is looking good. Oh, no. Light blue, I guess. Light blue. Maybe that will look good. It looks awful. Okay, let's just leave it. Let's just leave it the way it is, okay? Light gray will be okay. Okay, good. So this is just how you can go and select things and then write whichever styling you want. There's also one more control. Okay, this is called a hidden control. Let me go and explain that one. Why you would need a hidden control. If I go and write something like this here, let me go and write input h, right, hidden, and then give a name to it. So I can say user ID, and the value is, let's say, 123, right? So the hidden control is not going to be displayed to in your form. It won't be displayed. See, I refreshed and you don't see this particular control anywhere. It's neither an input control or anything. It's just a hidden control. Okay, why you would need a hidden control? Okay, let me first show you what it does. So let me go and fill in something here, and then let me go and select Tajikistan, whatever, and press submit. Now you can see that user ID is equal to something like this, right? Now imagine that the server wants to ask something from the user. Let's say he wants to ask the favorite food of the user, right? So and the server-side script is actually generating a form, for collecting this user information. So while the server-side script is generating a form, it knows to which user it is generating this form, right? It knows the ID of the user, right? So, and it can go and create, while generating a form, it can go and create additional control like this. And in this control, it can go and set certain value, let's say the ID of the user, to which this form is created, right? This entire form can be generated dynamically, again, by the PHP, or it doesn't matter, dynamically, non-dynamically. The point is you're showing this form to some user, right? So, and then you want to collect the data from that user back. So this part, okay, you can go and set that particular value to the ID of the user. Let's say you got some variable, you could have some variable like this, right? Somewhere, again, we are not working with the databases, but let's say you retrieve the user and you know the user ID, so you can go and place something like that. So this place you can go and, let's say, somewhere you have a code, some PHP code, which initializes that user ID. So let me go and say user ID, right? So let's say 123. Maybe, I don't know, it doesn't matter how you get that particular user ID database, but you're showing this form to one particular user, right? And then when the user goes and clicks submit, okay, you would like to know with which user this particular data is associated with, right? And like you selected, you received this data, now you know, okay, this is the user for which I generated this form, because you can have multiple users viewing this form, and they could be submitting this data to you. You want to kind of identify, you want to match this data to a particular ID. So you can go and like update the user information with this particular user ID, right? So if I go and render this page again, if I go and look into the view source, I can see that, okay, this is 123, this is for user ID 123, right? Now the user with ID 123, okay, fills in this form, right? And then submits the data. Now you receive everything, but also you receive the user ID. Now you know, okay, this data belongs to this user, and you can go and correspondingly update all this information in a database or somewhere where you're kind of storing this information with that particular user ID. So hidden controls, hidden fields could be used to save a certain state on the client side, right? So you want to store that particular value on the client side. And whenever the client is coming back to you with the data, you want to know, okay, Okay, can you give me something, okay, that could identify, that could kind of identify the user, identify the client for me? And yes, and then because you already left this information on the form, the client is giving back you that information, and now you can kind of recognize the client and then use this particular data in a proper way, right? Okay, great. So now, yeah, we discussed the creation of forms, but we haven't talked about much about what's actually happening on the server side. We'd like to know what's happening on the server side, how the server can go and read this information, right? So it said that everything got URL encoded, and everything is basically sent using HTTP forms or URL query strings. And as I said, the other way of sending data to the server is using Ajax, and it's a JavaScript way of sending things. And we'll talk about that when we talk about JavaScript. But most importantly, we have forms, and we can go and use forms to collect the data from the user and then send that data to the server. Now let's think how we can go and process that data on the server. Now remember, we have a PHP script running on the server. Now we can use PHP to collect this information, okay, from the user. Okay, so I told you that, right? So passing things over GET is not always the right thing to do, because the GET has a limited size and it's always visible to the user. So the user can go and see that and then can go and modify that particular parameter. Okay, and okay, and it's not always suitable for different types of data, right? So how can I go and change it to post, right? I already showed you how to change it to post. So I can go and change it to post. So it goes and sends things like post. So now I would like to send some data, not to the HTTP bin, but to a PHP script that is hosted on my computer. This is a remote, okay, script. I don't know what it's doing there. Okay, I can go and create my own PHP script that will process this data, right? So let me go and create that page. So here I'm going to replace it with data.php. Okay, let me go and create that file here now. I'll go and create this file. I'll call it data.php. And let me go and create a simple HTML here again. And data received. Okay, so let me go and give h2 form data. I'm going to do that, something like that. So the first thing that I'd like to show here is, let me go and put some, or let me go and use DL here again. I like DLs, right? And DT. So the first thing I'd like to show is which HTTP method I used to access this particular page. I can access this particular resource using multiple HTTP methods. I can use it HTTP GET, I can use HTTP POST or anything. I just want to know about that. How I can go and know about that? Okay, I can use, again, now I can use the PHP dictionary, a global dictionary that will be populated automatically whenever this page is requested. So it goes and converts my entire request into one big dictionary called server. So it is basically coming from the web server. So one of the important properties of the server is the request method. So I can say request method. So you see my ID actually helps me to figure out this name. It's a request underscore method, and this particular value contains information about the about that particular the method that I'm using to send the data, right? So let me go and go back to my index.php, right? and submit something to this particular page. Now the data is not going somewhere else. It's coming back to this particular data.php, and here I'm receiving the request, and I can see which method it was using to access this particular resource, right? So let me go and try this out. Now, this is my form. Let's say my name and all that stuff I'm selecting here, and press submit. And now I can see that, okay, the URL is changed. Now I used HTTP post method to access this method. Indeed, if you look into my request, I'm indeed using post method. I can see that, right? So now based on that information, I can go and generate a different content. I can put an if statement here. I can go and put an if statement here. So for example, I can go and say, so let me put if is equal to, it's not equal to get, let's say, sorry, not equal to post. So I close the if statement here and say else, and then let me go and write another block here, and I go and put something like that. And I can go and say some message here. This page only accepts post requests, right? Yeah, so I can go and use this if else statement to indicate whether this page can be accessed in a different way. So if I go and do this, yeah, did I place this one? Yeah, so this is if and this is else, something else. Okay, something is wrong here. Okay, perhaps because of this. So let me go and write this PHP. Yeah, so let me go and refresh that. Request method, post, else if, okay, so because I'm pressing refresh, it's simply resending the same HTTP post. If I go and press enter, yeah, it goes and sends an HTTP GET request, right? So, and I can see this page, right? So it basically showing me some sort of an error or something. If I go and try to access this page, it is simply going to show me this message, right? So if I go and write something here and then press submit, then yes, it's going to show me this thing. So everything is working fine. Okay, so now that is good, right? But I want to read the values that I'm kind of writing into this form, right? How can I go and read all this stuff, right? It's pretty easy. I can go and read all that stuff again. Okay, deep blue DD, and here I can say first name, and then I can go and open, and here I can use a request global dictionary, which contains all the parameters, both the query string parameters and the form parameters, okay, passed using the request, right? I can go and read that. If I say first name, it will be able to read this that is passed from the form to this particular script, right? So let me go and refresh this, and now I have everything here. Now let me go and press submit, And now you can see first name is equal to Sarvar, right? I can pass this information. I can read this information on the server side. This data.php is getting executed on the server side. So the browser actually, you press submit button, the browser sent this information, all this information, to this script on the server side. Now my server is running here. It executes this PHP script on the server side, and it knows it. You remember, all that information is inside your request. It goes and reads everything from your request. Okay, it reads your request method from your request. It reads all the parameters that are passed through the request. It goes and reads that, and then with that information, it generates a new HTML and then sends it to the browser. Now, browser displays you this. Okay, if you go and open this inspect, you're going to see, okay, not inspect, view page source, you're going to see that it basically contains those values, okay, that were inserted by the PHP, right? So that's what's happening here. You can go and read any value here, any of these parameters. For example, let's go and read some array here, right? I can go and read arrays too. How can I go and read arrays, and how can I iterate through arrays? Let's go and let's say go through that. For example, I can go and say countries visited. In this case, I can go and open a PHP again, and I can say for each, right? So for each, and so what's the name of the array here? Let's go and find this out. Okay, countries visited. Okay, I can go and copy that and just write it here as, say, item or country, right? That's how I can go and write a for each loop in PHP. And let me go and say PHP here, and then close that parentheses. And yeah, I forgot to write a UL here, another UL, right? And what else? Okay, I got a li here, and inside that li, I'd like to show my country, different countries that I visited, sort of, right? So let's go and look into this. So I can press something like that, and now I got countries visited. I can select multiple countries, okay, and I press submit, and it says countries visited is not there. Yes, it's not there because I have to take away this countries visited, right? So let's go and try this out again. Press this, and now here we go. These are the countries I visited. I can actually, okay, list them in the form of okay, a list item here, right? I can include that. I can repeat. I can iterate through this particular value, right? I can actually see what kind of values my request contains, right? I can do something simple as okay, request parameters. I can do something as simple as this. I can say print r. By the way, if I'm using print, I have to say PHP because print already goes and prints something. So I can say request. So if I do something like that, it kind of, because request is a dictionary, it simply prints out all the values of request that is inside request parameter. So I can go and do that one as well. So let me go and fill in this form again and press submit. Now these are the values inside request. It has first name, this is the value, it has last name, and has all the parameters. You can go and look into them in this form. Okay, this is the array, and these are the key value pairs. This is an array as well, and it contains different elements, and so forth. So you can look into this array and its structure and its pre-fields and the values, and you can basically access anything, okay, that is being given to you in the form of a request. You can also look into the content of a request as well. Okay, let's go and do it in a different way. Instead of using print r, what I will do is I will server parameters. Okay, instead of that, I'd like to go and iterate through every element here, right? So what I will do is I'll go and write for each, and I'll say server as, and I'll say name and value. So now this is how I can iterate through a key value pair, right? So I close this, and I can say I can go and say okay, what how I would list this. Let me go and use ul again, and Lee again, and inside Lee I'll go and say user, sorry, name, and let's go and put some delimiter here, maybe this, and then the value. So the value itself could be some array. So let me go and be more careful about this one and use print, or I can go and use something else called vardump. If I don't know what sort of variable it is, I can simply use vardump. If it's an array, it will be converted into something readable array. If it's an object, it will be an object. If it's just a simple text, it will be just a text, right? So I can go and use the vardump method to read this particular value, right? So let me go and submit something again and press enter, and now, okay, now I have all the possible value, I mean all the values that are populated into the server dictionary. These are all the values that are populated into the request parameter. Okay, so note one more thing: all your HTTP headers are created, okay, in this server parameter, in this server dictionary, with a prefix HTTP underscore. So for example, if you'd like to read a user agent header, remember we have that particular header. It always gets sent, right? So this is the header, right? User agent, for example, where is that? So if you look into this, there should be a user. You see user agent. This is the header, content type, origin. All of that stuff is getting sent as part of your HTTP request. And you can go and read the same values. Okay, this is the value of that particular header. So if you're looking for a particular HTTP header, then what you need to do is, okay, note that, okay, this dash thing gets replaced with this underscore here, right? So if there is a dash in the name of that particular header, right, so just go and replace it with this underscore. Okay, sorry, this underscore, and then, okay, just prefix the HTTP, and you know that, okay, this is the HTTP header that is being passed to you, okay, as part of the browser request. So you can go and read all the HTTP headers, request headers, okay, and again make decisions based on that. Okay, define what sort of content you would like to generate based on that too, right? So all of that information is given to you here, right? Great. So yeah, there's one final thing. Yeah, so request is just a general way of learning about the parameter. But if you know that your parameter is being passed using HTTP post method, then you can go and use underscore post. Okay, this underscore post will contain everything that is, okay, passed using a form submit. Okay, so you can go and press this, and it knows that it is Sarvar. It can read that too. Okay, but you can also represent the data that is coming from, okay, from the query string. So for that, you can go and use a different dictionary called get, and say ID, say ID sent over query string. Okay, so for example, you can pass some IDs, okay, and you can go and read this from the query string, right? So if I go and write here data.php, and now I say ID is equal to, let's say, this one, okay, now you can see that this get, okay, can go and read the values from the query string, and the query string parameter is ID, parameter is ID, it goes and reads the value and then places it here. The same value that goes here can be, okay, expressed like that. So get can be replaced with request, no problem. Request contains both values that are passed over, okay, over query string or form, doesn't matter. It will be able to read both, okay. So request is kind of a general dictionary. Get and post are more specific to a particular HTTP request method, right? So there's one more thing that is remaining, and it is uploading files. Okay, so like we can go and upload everything, right? So from like everything in a parameterized form, but like can we go and upload files as well in a parameterized form, right? So obviously not, because files contain additional information. For example, other than the parameter name, I would need to store the file's content type, file name, and the file's actual content as well, right? So it contains some metadata too, right? So obviously the URL encoding, like the key value pairs, right, will not be enough to encode the information about the file. So we need to use a different encoding method for that, right? So let me go and demonstrate you an example with a file control. So I can go into here. I can go into my control here, and I can create a new field. In this case, I'm going to say DDDT. So let me go and say avatar photo, sort of. And now I have another control, input control, called file. And here I can go and give a name to this particular parameter. Parameter is called avatar. And another thing that I can go and set here is the type of file this particular control can select. So if I want the user to select only images, I can go and set images/many. If I want only JPEG, I can go and say JPEG. If I want only GIF, I can go and say GIF, or I can go and put many different types like this, or I can, if I want doc, then I can say application doc or some document, something like that, okay? If I don't know the MIME type for that, I can go and write like this as well, doc, and so forth, right? I can go and write something like that. I don't need this star, I guess. Okay, so you can go and write it like this. Let me go and say I want all the images, right? So this is how I will go and set the filter, let's say, the files that user can select for that particular, okay, control. So now I created an input control, and this input control now will select, can select a file. There's one more thing that I need to change here. I have to go back into my form in which this input file is there, set the encoding type to multipart form data. So it will now, from now on, it will use a different encoding to send the data. It will not use the URL encoding that we saw in the body. Now it will use a different one, okay? So I'm going to show you that encoding, okay, actually, how it's different from the URL encoding. But before that, let me go and prepare the backend, okay, the script. This is just the form that the user sees, okay, and then the browser simply goes and interprets it. But now here I'm going to receive that particular, okay, file. So how can I go and receive that file? So let's say I know it's an image, so let me go and, let's say, display that image, okay, somewhere. So I can go and say dt again, and I can say avatar. And here I'd like to display that image. So let me go and create an image tag here. And here inside the source, I'd like to put some variable called image path. But okay, how can I go and populate that image path, right? So let me go and define what image path is. So I got a PHP block here, and here I'm going to define a variable called image temp path. Okay, so this is going to be the path, temporary path of my image. How do I know where is the temporary path? So every time I send the data from the browser to the server, the PHP interpreter will go and check the data that it is received in the response body. Okay, sorry, in the request body. Okay, and it goes and parses the request body. So depending what sort of encoding it uses, okay, it uses a multi-part encoding, and it goes and parses it using a multi-part encoding. We're going to see this multi-part encoding later on. So it goes and parses it, and if it contains a file, it goes and populates another global dictionary called files. So I can go and say avatar here. This is remember, that's the name of the file. I mean, the parameter that I specify. It's not the name of the file. That's the parameter name. And this parameter is mapped to a file. I can go and say file. And then there is another property, tmp name, which contains the temporary path for that particular file. So again, when the web server receives this, PHP receives this particular file, it goes and saves it in some temporary location on your computer, okay, in some file system. So it goes and gives some random name to that particular file and stores it in your file system in a temporary location, right? And it stores that path to that temporary file in this particular key, okay, in this particular parameter. So you can go and store it inside, okay, image temp path file. Okay, so you want to have image path as well. So, and let's go and create a folder here inside our main, let's say, host, call it images. And I got an images folder here. And now I would like to go and create my path images, and it has to be concatenated with the file that is being uploaded. So now, okay, how do I know the name of the file? Okay, for that I got a different property called name, and this gives me the actual file name that the user actually uploaded. So this is the name of the file, and this is the physical location of the file. So it goes, the PHP automatically goes and stores that into that particular place, right? So now I have two paths, the temporary path and let's say it's called permanent path. But the file is located in the temporary path. It's not located here. It's just a mere string. What I need to do is I need to take the file from its temporary location and move it to, okay, its real location. That's what I'm going to do now. So I'll go and check first, is uploaded file. I'm going to check if this file actually exists in a given location. If it exists indeed, then what I can do is, in fact, you know what? I can go and store it as a separate file, is uploaded. And it is a different variable now. Why I'm doing it? Because I'm going to use this later on. So now I'm going to say, if the file is uploaded, then I would like to move the uploaded file from its temporary location to its permanent location, right? That's what I want to do. Okay, so now I would like to do another PHP script here. And here it is an if statement. And I say, is the file uploaded? If it is uploaded, then go ahead and show the image. If it's not uploaded, so I'll say, so don't forget to close the curly braces, right? and I open another else. Let me go and copy that, and then close this else clause as well. Right, so if the file is uploaded, yes. If it's not uploaded, then say no avatar uploaded, or just say no avatar. Just show this text, right? So let's go and try this out. Okay, so I can go and try something like that. I can go and select this thing. Let me go and select some picture where I go and select some picture. So do I have any picture here? Yeah, so I got a picture here. So I can go and select everything, and now I press submit. And here we go. Yeah, it's saying countries not, because I haven't selected anything, and it's trying to remember if nothing is selected, that particular parameter is not given. So, and this is going to show you this matter. But the point is, I got this image here, right? I got this image here, and I can see this image copied into my into my images directory, right? So so here, yeah, the country is visited because it is not. I mean, it can if the user doesn't select it, it may not be passed as a parameter. So what I can do to fix this bug, I can go and say is set and check that out. If it's set, then I'm going to run this loop. If it's not set, I'm not going to run this loop. Okay, I'm not even going to show you this UL, empty UL, right? I'm not going to do this. So let me go and copy this as well. It's just going to close the parameter. So what I'm doing is I'm checking if the country's visit is actually passed as a parameter to this particular, and if it's not passed, I'm not even if it is passed, then I'm going to iterate through these elements. I don't want to see all these errors. So let me go and try this out. I don't want to see these warnings and notices. I haven't selected anything. Let me go and not select anything. Again, just press cancel and press submit. Okay, now it says no avatar, right? The file is not there, and the countries visited is empty, right? So yeah, and if I select something again, and I can see my avatar, I can see that everything is got rendered and placed to this one. There's one more thing that I'd like to show you. Okay, so there's a program called Fiddler, and this Fiddler is like a sniffer. It goes and sniffs everything that goes out, like from your browser to local. So it doesn't matter if it goes in localhost or anywhere else. It just sniffs all the packets and then shows you everything. Okay, so you can go and download the Fiddler. Okay, from Telerik, I guess. Fiddler. You can just search for Fiddler download. It's a web debugging proxy. You can download it. Okay, it's a kind of a neat tool. I actually installed it. Okay, and can use it from time to time. I'd like to use it to debug my pages. Sometimes the browser's capabilities are not enough. Why? Because I mean, it doesn't show you the if you go and use the multi-part content here. Because see, I'm using a multi-part encoding in this case, right? And that was the post requirement, and you can see it doesn't contain the body of the request. Why? Because the content type of the request is multi-part data. Okay, and you can see it doesn't show you that, right? So what if I just want to see the request body as well? In this case, yeah, I cannot use the in this case, I have to use something else, right? I have to use a sniffer like this to see the request, to log the request that is being issued by the browser. So let me turn on the traffic, so it goes and starts capturing all the traffic. So let me go and select something here, and then select this image again, and then press submit now. Again, my PHP got executed and everything. It generated all the content. Now I'm more interested in this thing. So let me turn it off so it doesn't get polluted. Now this is the request that I sent. It's a post request. If I go back into the actual, okay, let me go and select the raw here. If I go back here, I can see the entire HTTP request, okay, and I can see the response as well. And this is the response. So I'm interested in the request itself. Look into this HTTP request. It's familiar, right? It's an HTTP method. This is the path. This is the host, and this is the version. These are all the HTTP headers. But look into the request body section. Now it contains something else. It doesn't contain a URL encoded thing. It contains data in a different form. And indeed, it goes and tells that to the server. It says that the content type in my request body is not a URL encoded type. It is, remember, previously when we were passing things, it was application/URLX encoded, right? Now it's different. Now it says multipart form data, and it also provides an additional information. It says it's a boundary. I mean, its boundary is some hash key, some random, okay, string. It says warm form boundary and some random string, okay, which is generated by the browser. So this particular string is going to be a delimiter of each type of content. So I got multiple parts of the content, and this will be used as a delimiter, right? So now this is the first border boundary, and now the first part contains form data. I'm saying, okay, its type is a form data. The parameter value is a first name, and currently it doesn't contain anything. It's an empty string. For example, the biography, it contains, okay, this particular string. The birth town contains this. The pilaf contains that, and countries visited, you can see it's repeating to indicate that this is an array. And most importantly, it contains a different type of data. Yes, its parameter name is avatar, but now it has additional parameters: file name, content type, right? I can go and add many more parameters, for meta parameters for that particular value, for that particular parameter. And along with that, I have the actual content of the file. Again, it looks like kind of garbage, but the point is, I mean, it's trying to convert the bytes into some characters. Obviously, that doesn't work like that, right? So you cannot convert bytes into characters. But the point is, these are the actual content. This is the bytes of your, okay, file, and it's been again inside that particular part, which is bounded by these boundary lines, right? So after this container, this data, there is another boundary which is with the same key, and it contains the hidden control, user ID, and the value, right? So this is how you're sending all that data in a different way, again using the HTTP request. But now in the cargo section, the request body, we're encoding the data in a different way. We're not using URL encoding. We're using a multi-part encoding, and we're specifying the boundary is a random boundary. Okay, and it's very, very unlikely that anything in your code will be like this. Okay, will be any of your values will be like exactly like this. Okay, of course you can hack if you go and set, if you know beforehand what sort of WebKit boundary it will go and use, you can set the value to it and it will be like that, so it can kind of confuse the server. But okay, the browsers are smart too. They go and generate a hash, and this hash you don't know, okay, and this hash will be random, so you can go and you don't know the boundary. This boundary will be unique, and it can be used to separate multiple content, right? So that was the final thing that I want to show you. Most of the code that I explained to you is in fact given in the slides. I also share this example code in GitHub. So hopefully that was clear. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the lab.